Hi everybody, Ricky T23 here again. Today I'm going to be doing a video where I replace the case of this computer. Some people like this retro style HP Pavilion 710 plastic case with its very early 2000s CD holder in the top. At the moment inside this case I'm using a AGP GT 6600. It's got a Pentium 4 3.2 gigahertz. And a Sound Blaster Audigy 2ZS Platinum. I'm not going to be replacing the power supply today. This one runs okay, it's a 350 watt power supply. What I'm going to be putting those computer parts in is this case here, which arrived in my mail this morning. It's a Deepcool Matrexx 30. I paid $22.99 for it, and it was like £5 shipping. It's still under £30. And the mental thing about this case is it's supposed to have a tempered glass side panel. It's perfect. It's a micro ATX case with a tempered glass side panel. It's got one optical bay, which I need, 5¼ inch drive bay, because I like to play Windows XP era games on my Geforce GT 6600 with my Pentium 4. Early era Windows XP games run great. So yeah, so I'm going to unbox this bad boy and then see if we can do a quick refit. The whole idea is really just to give you guys a look at the case and see what you get for $22.99. Got my trusty blue handled scissors. So there we go, that actually looks quite nice. I have another Deepcool case, the Deepcool Tesseract. That was in the Voodoo video that I made a couple of months ago. Caution glass. It's got a tempered glass side panel, alright. It doesn't even have the... You know, I always put cellophane on these things. This doesn't have any cellophane on it, but it looks clean, it looks shiny. Pretty heavy duty metal screws with rubber pads. Lift that off with that. Whoop! Yeah, that's a pane of glass. It's like slightly darkened. It's got a slight dark tint to it. I quite like the sticker that says caution glass. I'm just going to leave that there. Yeah, so this case for $22.99, it's got three 3.5 inch drive bays. There's no power supply shroud. A dust filter on the bottom there. Plastic feet. It's quite a big power switch and reset switch. Actually feels quite nice when I click it. It doesn't feel super expensive, but it doesn't rattle around. And I like this pattern on the front. I guess it's part of the Matrix thing. It's got these varying lines that kind of just in a haphazard pattern, which is kind of reminiscent of the characters from the Matrix running down the screen. Just take off the back panel. Just to get that off without slicing any of my fingers off. Yeah, it's got a little bit of room for cabling. It's not a huge amount, but there is a bit of depth in that back panel, so I'd imagine we can get a few cables through there. Looks like we've got mounting holes for a 2.5 inch hard drive there if we wanted to put one. It also looks like it's got another little place to put a 2.5 inch drive here, so I can see at least two 2.5 inch drive mounts. There's a little bag of accessories up here. 6 cable ties. It's got a PC speaker. Doesn't seem to have any manual with it. And there's some quite big thumb screws in there as well. It obviously takes up to micro ATX motherboards, and it's got standoffs pre-installed. And it does have this fan. Can confirm it's a 3-pin fan. And then yeah, you've obviously got your front panel connectors. HD audio for the front audio ports. And there's a USB 3 header there, but it's got both types of header. It's got the 9-pin, I wonder if that'll work for USB 2, I hope so. And it's also got the old USB 3 header. So yeah, it's pretty light. It's finished very well. It's not got any dents in it. Nice and clean. I think for the money, I quite like the badge. It's got this sort of stripy texture to it. Metallic Deepcool logo on there. I like it. For $23.99 or $22.99, I'm not complaining. Right, I'm going to strip down that computer over there and see if I can transplant the parts into this case. be the last that we see of this lovely case. Right, let's have a look at all the little parts that I'm going to use. We've got this WinFast Geforce 6600 GT AGP 8X, I think. 128 megabyte version. We've got this Sound Blaster Audigy 2 ZS Platinum. It's got gold plated connectors and it's got EAX and it's very nice. It's got a good signal to noise ratio, so you don't get much noise coming from the audio output. Now this is a SATA hard disk drive. I think this is an 80 gigabyte Maxtor Diamond Max 21. I've had this for a long time, but I'm actually going to use this SSD, a PNY 128 megabyte gigabyte SSD. And there's this IDE DVD ROM drive. It's got a kind of light grey front bezel, which is weird. I'd rather have a black one. I might have a look and see if I've got anything a bit better. And the motherboard and CPU. I think this is actually an OEM motherboard. It's a, I guess it looks like an Asus. It's a P4SD-LA. It's got Intel, well, it's got an Intel chipset. Don't ask me which one. I think it's socket 478, but I could be wrong about that. I just know that it's got a good AGP slot and it's 3.2 gigahertz Pentium 4. It's perfect for sort of early 2000s games. So yeah, so let's bung it into this Deepcool Matrexx 30. Major limitation of this case. It's quite short, so I've just realised I hadn't picked up on this sooner. This long IDE DVD drive won't fit in the case because there's just not enough room. It touches up against the side of the motherboard. It's going to interfere with the connectors on the motherboard and the capacitors. So I think I could make this work as long as I make sure that I use a shorter DVD drive. I can put it in, it's going to touch up against the motherboard. It's still protruding like an inch. If I got one of the motherboards that's less wide, micro ATX boards that they're only so wide, and they don't require all standoffs, then I could make this work. But for a full width micro ATX motherboard, there's just not enough room in the case. Okay guys, look at this. I've swapped out a drive, an IDE DVD drive from one of my other computers that was shorter. I don't think it's actually touching the motherboard though, so I'm actually going to leave it like this. It protrudes more at one side on the front than it does at the other, so it looks wrong. The only way I can really think of remedying this is for me to replace the motherboard with one that's like 200 millimeters wide. So I'm considering doing that, but for the time being and for the sake of this build video, I'm just going to proceed. think we're about ready to get these panels back on and try and boot this baby again and see what happens. It's got rubber fittings. It's like metal standoffs, but on the outside of the metal standoffs there's this rubber. Now, the year is 2020. I do not have anything in there that's got any lights on it except for perhaps a motherboard LED. I think that's about it. Although the LEDs for the power and the hard disk drive activity should work because they are connected. The only thing I'm worried about is that this DVD drive that sticks out slightly and doesn't really look very nice. It might be touching the motherboard, but I'm pretty sure it's not. I think it's hovering a few millimeters away from the motherboard, but I'm not happy about it. My solution is going to be to either get a micro ATX motherboard that's not the full width, get one that's about 200 millimeters wide. You can even get modern ones with AM4 sockets, probably any type you like really, but it's got to be micro ATX and it's got to be the narrow micro ATX. And then you can fit a standard sized modern SATA DVD or an IDE DVD drive in there. But a lot of the retro main boards for the micro ATX are wider than 200 mils. Not all of them. There are ones going back at least 20 years, probably as far as you can go. Just depends what kind of expansion slots you want on the motherboard and how fussy you are about the brand. But I have found one on eBay for about £20, which it's got all the same features as this one. So I can basically recreate this build with that motherboard and be able to fit this drive in without having some overlap. However, we've made it this far. I'm going to plug it in and see if it boots. Ooh. That's the 6600 GT BIOS. Seems to be hanging. Well guys, I'll give my review of this case. I mean, that's what the video's about. My build problems are going to get solved soon enough. It's nice. The build quality is good. It's got room in the front here for a couple of 120mm fans if you wanted to put some in there. It's probably got pretty good airflow actually. It's got the exhaust fan and it's got lots of meshing in the front. And there's holes in the back of the front panel which you can't see. But if you want to have an optical drive, make sure that you get one of the motherboards which is micro ATX and then like maybe 200mm wide. Not one of the full width ones. Don't do what I did. Get a slim motherboard. But the case is nice. It's got no lights in it. So if you got a pack of 3 LED fans to go with it, would finish it off. But the fact that you can get a micro ATX case that's got a tempered glass side panel for $22.99 plus shipping is fucking amazing. Knock yourselves out. Hi everybody. Right, it's a couple of days later. The miracle of eBay has provided me with this motherboard here. As you can see, it's a few centimeters shorter than this motherboard here in these dimensions. You see what I mean? This one's a 201mm and this one's like 240, I think. You can see this one's got space for 2 RAM DIMMs, which it doesn't even use. This one only has 2 RAM DIMMs. Now this one came with a 3 GHz processor pre-installed. Obviously this one has a 3.2, so I'm going to swap them over. But before I do that, I'm going to test this one just by plugging it in. Once that's all okay, I'll rebuild the computer. Okay everybody, I've installed this motherboard. If you look at the CPU fan, you'll see that the cable goes off into the back of the chassis there. I had to use a third-party fan controller because it's a budget motherboard and it doesn't seem to have support for variable fan speeds for the CPU. So my options would be to buy a slower fan or try and use that fan speed controller. So there's nothing actually plugged into the CPU fan header on the motherboard, but it doesn't seem to throw any errors. Everything seems to be working fine. I booted it from the original hard drive and everything works, but it said I had to reactivate Windows. So I'm reinstalling a copy of pre-activated Windows XP Pro onto that SSD. I mean, the only problems I have with this build now is the fact that the power supply is a piece of poo-poo. It needs replaced. Or at the very least I could get some of those mesh cladding or the mesh shroud that you put on the cables to make it look less like ketchup and mustard. And the fans, there's just one fan there in the back of the chassis. I could get a pack of 3 LED fans, make it look a lot nicer. But that is for another day. As for the case, I mean, I like it. Now I've sorted out the problem with the DVD drive sticking out of the side of the front of the case. Happy days.